pictures you took, Roger.
Where do I sleep, you ask?
Everyone remembers Carol Burnett the same way. The laughter, the wide grin, the way she'd trip over a chair on purpose and somehow make it look accidental. That famous ear tug at the end of every show. An entire studio audience gasping for air because they couldn't stop laughing. To millions of people watching at home, she looked untouchable, like joy itself, like nothing in the world had ever hurt her. But here's the part nobody ever says out loud. Sometimes the people who make us laugh the hardest are the ones carrying the heaviest pain. Because comedy doesn't always come from happiness. Sometimes it comes from survival. And Carol Burnett, she didn't become funny because life was kind to her. She became funny because life was ruthless. And if things had gone just a little differently, Hollywood would have erased her before we ever knew her name. The childhood nobody talks about. Long before the spotlight, before the Emmys, before becoming America's sweetheart, Carol was just a little girl trying to make sense of a messy, unpredictable world. Her parents weren't stable. They weren't dependable. They weren't even present. Both of them struggled with alcoholism, not the quiet kind you can hide behind closed doors, the loud kind, the chaotic kind. The kind that turns a home into a battlefield. Some nights, they'd vanish. Other nights, they'd argue. And every day came with the same question. What version of them am I going to get today? When you grow up like that, you learn something fast. Stay small. Stay quiet. Don't cause trouble. Because attention isn't safe. Eventually, things fell apart completely. Her parents couldn't take care of her anymore. So Carol was sent away to live with her grandmother. 3 generations, one cramped apartment, bills piling up, food sometimes running low, dreams feeling very far away. There were no acting classes, no connections, no magical discovered by a producer moment. Just survival, just getting through the week. And this is where the story gets uncomfortable, because comedy didn't start as a gift. It started as armor. When adults started fighting, she cracked a joke. When the tension got thick, she made a face. When everything felt like it might explode, she performed. Not for applause, for peace.
You got any more of those, Mama? You better say them now.
She wasn't trying to be the funny kid. She was trying to keep the room from falling apart. That's not entertainment. That's defense. That's a child learning how to fix broken moments with laughter. And even after she finally escaped that childhood, life didn't magically get better. It got harder. Hollywood didn't want her. When Carol moved to New York to chase acting, she arrived with almost nothing. No money, no fancy clothes, no famous relatives, no safety net. Just a suitcase, a stubborn streak, and a ridiculous amount of courage. She thought talent would be enough. Hollywood had other ideas. They didn't see a future star. They saw flaws. Too tall, too awkward, too expressive, too weird, too much. And then came the line that nearly crushed everything. She's not leading lady material. Back then, television had rules for women. Stand there, smile, look pretty, laugh at the man's jokes. That was it. Women weren't supposed to be the punchline. They weren't supposed to lead the comedy. They certainly weren't supposed to run the show. But Carol didn't want to stand beside the funny guy. She wanted to be the funny one. She wanted to fall down, pull faces, make noise, take risks. She wanted to own the stage. And to executives in the 1960s, that wasn't charming, it was threatening. So doors slammed shut. Audition after audition, rejection after rejection, no after no after no. Most people would have packed up and gone home. Most people would have decided maybe they're right. Carol didn't. She kept showing up, kept trying, kept believing there had to be room somewhere for someone like her. And honestly, that refusal to quit might be the only reason we know her name today. Because if she had listened, if she had shrunk herself to fit their rules, if she had tried to be pretty instead of funny, the Carol Burnett Show would have never existed. No iconic sketches, No legendary laughs, no ear-tug goodbye, no decades of joy for millions of people, just another almost. And maybe that's the real twist to her story. The woman who made the world laugh didn't come from comfort or privilege. She came from chaos, from uncertainty, from learning how to turn pain into punchlines, which makes her success feel different, deeper, harder earned. Because Carol Burnett didn't rise in spite of her struggles. She rose because she turned them into fuel. So the next time you see her laughing on screen, remember, that laugh wasn't just talent, it was strength. And sometimes the brightest light comes from someone who grew up in the darkest room of all. The accident that changed television history. Here's something almost nobody realizes. The Carol Burnett Show, one of the most legendary comedy programs ever made, wasn't born because a network believed in her brilliance. It wasn't greenlit because executives said, "She's a star, give her everything." It didn't happen because someone saw her potential and took a chance. It happened because of a technicality, a loophole, paperwork. Years earlier, when Carol was still climbing her way through small roles and guest appearances, CBS tossed a casual promise into her contract. If she ever wanted to do a variety show, they'd give her one. Simple, routine, almost meaningless. The kind of clause studios add just to keep talent happy. And honestly, they never expected her to use it. To them, it was safe, because in their minds, a woman leading a comedy variety show, that would never happen. So they didn't worry. Until one day, she asked for it. And suddenly, the joke was on them. Legally, they couldn't back out. They were stuck. Think about that for a second. One of the most iconic television shows in history, the show that would influence generations of comedians, only existed because a network got trapped by its own contract. Not belief, not support, not confidence, paperwork. And somehow that makes the story even wilder, because it gets worse. Behind closed doors, executives weren't celebrating. They weren't excited. They were bracing for failure. Quietly, they assumed a woman can't carry a comedy show. This won't even last one season. She doesn't have the authority to lead. So when they handed it over, it wasn't encouragement. It felt more like a setup, like they were saying, "Fine, take it. When it flops, don't blame us." They expected a disaster. Instead, it exploded. Ratings skyrocketed. Audiences fell in love. Sketches became classics. And suddenly, the mistake they never wanted turned into television history. The controversy they don't teach you. But here's where the clean, happy story falls apart. Because Carol wasn't the harmless, giggly clown people imagined. On camera, she looked warm and playful. Backstage, she was steel. She had to be. She rewrote scripts when the jokes weren't good enough. She rejected lazy comedy. She challenged writers. She cut sketches that didn't work. She fired people when they dragged the show down. She fought executives who tried to water things down. She protected her cast like family. She demanded control over her own work. In other words, she acted like a boss, and Hollywood didn't know what to do with that. Because when a man runs a show like that, he's called a genius, a visionary, a perfectionist. But when Carol did the exact same thing, suddenly the words changed. Now she was difficult, bossy, emotional, too controlling, hard to work with. Funny how fast respect turns into criticism when a woman holds the power. Whispers started floating around. She has an attitude. She asks for too much. She thinks she's in charge. The truth? She was in charge. Because if she hadn't been, the show would have collapsed. Sometimes difficult just means refuses to be pushed around. And Carol refused every time. The pressure no one talks about. Then came the pressure nobody talks about. Every week, millions of people tuned in just to laugh. Families gathered around their TVs. Kids stayed up past bedtime. The country fell in love with those sketches. But for Carol, it wasn't just another show. It felt like a test. Because if she failed, Hollywood wouldn't just cancel her. They'd use her as proof. See, we tried a woman, it didn't work. Doors wouldn't just close for her. They'd slam shut for every woman coming after her. every female comic, every actress with big ideas, every future creator. She wasn't just carrying a show, she was carrying an entire generation on her back. One bad season, and the industry would say, never again. That's not normal stress. That's war, fought in high heels, with a smile. When the cameras turned off, then came the part fame couldn't protect her from. Real life, messy, personal, unforgiving. Her marriages fell apart, divorces stacked up, relationships strained. Loneliness crept in quietly, like it always does. Because making millions laugh doesn't mean you go home happy. The applause stops, the lights go out, and suddenly it's just you in the silence. Then life hit harder than ever. Her daughter, Carrie. Carrie struggled for years with addiction. Carol didn't face it like a celebrity, she faced it like a mother. Rehab visits, late night calls, second chances, holding hope together with shaking hands, fighting battles no one saw. Slowly, things improved. They healed. They grew close again. They even started working together. For the first time in a long time, there was light. Then cancer arrived. Fast, aggressive, cruel. No warning, no fairness. And in 2002, Carol buried her daughter. Read that again. The woman who gave the world decades of laughter went home to a grief most people couldn't survive. No audience, no applause, no jokes big enough to fix it. Just loss. The kind you don't move on from. The kind you simply learn to carry, quietly, forever. Sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who break and still show up the next day. Why she never quit? Why didn't she walk away like so many others would? Because Carol Burnett had been training for pain her whole life. Remember that little girl in the cramped apartment? The one who learned to crack jokes so adults wouldn't fight? The one who discovered laughter could calm chaos? She never left. Comedy was never about fame. It was never about awards. It was survival. Always survival. Making people laugh wasn't just her talent. It was her shield, her armor, her way of saying life doesn't get to beat me. The truth we missed. So maybe we misunderstood her all along. Maybe Carol Burnett wasn't funny because life was easy. Maybe she was funny because life was heavy. Because sometimes laughter isn't joy. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's strength disguised as silliness. Behind every goofy face, every fall, every sketch, was a woman fighting battles we never saw. Hollywood didn't want her. Executives doubted her. Pressure followed her. Loss nearly crushed her. And somehow, she still showed up, still smiled, still made the world laugh. Not because she had it easy, but because she refused to quit. And honestly, that's not just comedy. That's courage.